If you ever wanted to know what you need to change about your leveling and econ in set 14, this is going to be the video for you because a couple of things have changed based on the set mechanic. So let's go over everything you need to know, but first let's cover the most popular leveling patterns. There's standard leveling, which focuses on the more universal comps in the game, such as 4-cost carries. Most of the trait focused comps do standard leveling, and you could also mix in fast 8 and fast 9ing to kind of branch it out a little bit after that. But most team comps you are going to play in TFT are going to revolve around standard leveling. That's why it's called standard. After that, we have the 1-cost, 2-cost, and 3-cost reroll, along with some hybrids between the two. Like sometimes when you do a 2-cost reroll, you go for a 3-cost right after that. So we'll cover all these different types of leveling patterns in this video, but also cover must-know leveling and econ tips at the end of the video. Let's start off with standard leveling. So standard leveling, as we said before, is great in most situations, especially if you're playing flex. You could decide to pivot into 2-cost and 3-cost reroll as well. You don't have to stay standard the whole time. And it's good for comps that have reliable carries at different cost levels. For example, when we talked about the trait related comps, oftentimes these comps have a great 1-cost carry, 3-cost carry, then 4-cost carries so that you could switch the items pretty easily. Another comp might have a really good 2-cost carry in the early game and then go straight to 4-cost. That'd be another good situation to use standard leveling. Now, if you're playing a 4-cost centric comp that does not have a good early game item holder, you might consider going for a very fast 8 where you kind of get to level 8 as quickly as possible, find that carry, and then play around them before you die. That could also work too. Also, if you are a 5-cost focused comp, you go for a fast 9. But let's go over how to actually execute standard leveling, because I think that's the trickiest part of the whole game. And if you know this, you'll know maybe 60 to 70% of most of the things you need to know about leveling and econ. So first, when we start out in the game, you're level 1, you can only play 1 unit, but each level you go up, you can add an additional unit to your team, along with getting better rolling odds. That means the higher level you go, the more rare and more expensive units show up a little more often than they did before. But every round that passes by in TFT, you gain 2 experience points, and as you get higher and higher level, it costs more experience to reach the next level. For example, going from level 1 to 2, you just have to gain 2 XP to do that. Same for level 2 to 3. This happens automatically. But then to get to level 9 or level 10, you need to spend 70 to 80 XP in order to do that. So after the initial starting stage, right as you enter stage 2, this is one of the most crucial moments in TFT because not only do you have to pick your first augment, you have to decide whether you want to level up to level 4 or stay level 3. No matter what type of rolling pattern you're using, this is one of the most critical decisions you can make in a game of TFT. So we did mention briefly before that leveling up to level 4 allows you to play an additional unit. So with that in mind, it'd be ideal to win a bunch of rounds if you do invest that gold in the early game because you can take advantage of the extra unit. However, you also do handicap yourselves because you unlock more expensive units. This may sound counterintuitive, but in the early game, you want to play around 1-cost units most of the time. And when you level up, you lower the odds of seeing those 1-cost units. So I would only really recommend leveling up early on in the game if you already have upgraded 1-cost units. These are units such as Alistair, Kindred, Kog'Maw. That way, that little downside doesn't affect you at all because you already have the upgrades, and then you want to look for the more expensive units. If you think you're going to lose the early game, what you want to do instead is stay level 3 and make what's called interest gold. So leveling up, you need to buy experience points to do that. And the way to do that is by buying experience in increments of 4. So you have to spend 4 gold every time you want to buy experience. That means it could be very, very costly and can leave you at some weird intervals. Another thing to consider is that you make interest gold every 10 gold you bank up at the end of a round up to 5 gold. So if you have 50 gold, you get 5 gold of extra interest, and if you have 10 gold, you get 1 gold of interest. This is pretty much free money every round, so you really have to balance spending and saving money in TFT. But typically, when you do standard leveling, you reach level 4 either on stage 2-1 or 2-3, depending on what decision you made at stage 2-1. For level 5, it's a little bit easier. Most people reach level 5 either at stage 2-5 or 3-1. Again, it would depend on what you did before. And it is important to note that you do not want to spend your gold on rolling your shops in the early game. unless you have a very specific strategy that you're executing. This is because your life total can be used as a resource, so it's not super important to win the early rounds, even though it is nice. This is because you lose less life earlier on in the game, so I'd rather save my gold to get stronger later on when the stakes are much higher. That's why you typically do not want to roll. Like the entirety of stage 2, you probably won't roll in like 99% of your games. But once you reach level 6, which almost always happens at around stage 3-2, you do have the option of rolling. So generally at this point in the game, you should have around 20 to 30 gold, depending on how your early game went. If you took like an economy augment, which is an augment which gives you either XP or gold, you might have a lot more than this. Like sometimes I have 50 at this point in the game if I had a super crazy econ early on, but that doesn't always happen. But on stage 3-2, you do have the option of rolling a little bit. That's because at level 6, you have access to a wide range of units. During this middle part of the game, your life total does start to matter a little bit. So if you have a lot of pairs on your bench, or if you are extremely low health, you probably could roll a couple of times just to get some upgrades and really strengthen your board in stage 3. That way you don't have to do it so much later on in the game. Next, we have to think about level 7. So level 7, you generally reach this on stage 4-1, but sometimes if you have big econ, you could do it on stage 3-5, and if you have really bad econ, you reach it on stage 4-2. My rule of thumb here on deciding when to reach level 7 is if you can level up and reach the next level, but still have 30 or more gold in your bank account, then go ahead and level up. This is a rule that people have been using for pretty much like 13 sets, and it's like a tried and true method that everyone has been using that stood the test of time, at least in TFT. And again, similar to level 6 in terms of rolling, the same rules apply. If you do have pairs you want to complete, go ahead and roll for them at level 7. But if not, you probably want to save most of your gold for level 8. The reason why is because the whole point of doing standard leveling is to play around 4 cost units, and level 8 is one of the most efficient levels to do that. So unless you have 4 or more pairs on your bench, or like 3 or more pairs that are important to your team, do not roll at this point yet and save it for level 8 instead. That brings us to the next question. When do we want to reach level 8? Well, that's going to generally happen at either stage 4-2, 4-5, 5-1, or 5-2. In really high econ games, you want to reach it earlier, so stage 4-2 or 4-5, and in really low econ games, you want to reach it around stage 5, or if you had to roll a lot earlier on in the game. For example, if you roll down at level 7 a bunch, you don't need to reach level 8 that quickly because your board's already strong from rolling from before. But usually, you want to roll a lot of gold at level 8 when you're doing this type of leveling strategy. I'd say at least 30 gold at bare minimum, preferably around like 40 or 50 gold. And you want to roll until you either get most of your important upgrades, or just roll all the way down until you have around 10 gold left over. You also have to keep in mind what your life total is at. If you have a ton of life, for example, if you're 80 HP or above, you might not even need to roll at all, and you could instead save all your money to go level 9 instead, but it is a little bit risky. If you're lower than 80 life though around this stage, like you definitely should be rolling at least a little bit, because you're going to be struggling a lot if you do not hit your upgrades during stage 4, because this is when player damage really picks up. Next we have is level 9, and level 9 is great for accessing legendary units. Like you can see legendaries as early as level 7, but the percentages don't go that high until level 9. For example, it's 1% at level 7, I think like 3% at level 8, but then 10% at level 9, so it really does kick up quite a bit. And then as soon as you do hit level 9, you want to spend as much gold as you can, because you're probably not reaching level 10 in like 95% of your games. And if you did reach level 10, you probably didn't need to in order to win. Most people cap out at level 9. So luckily for you, at this point in the game, if you've made it here already, you've probably already done really well. Most people, when they decide between going level 8 or level 9, the decision maker is, if you're trying to win the game completely, you want to go level 9. If you're trying to just get a top 4, stay level 8. But if you were in this fortunate position to be able to play for a win, you generally hit level 9 sometime in either early or middle of stage 5. Perhaps if you saved up some of your gold at level 8 because you're high HP, you could easily reach level 9 at like stage 5-1 or 5-2, but had you rolled like 30 or more gold at level 8, you're generally going to have to wait until like stage 6 in order to level up. But again, at this point in the game, you want to roll all the way down to 0. When we were at level 8, I like holding around like 10 gold at least. That way I can econ back up much more quickly. In late stage 5 and stage 6, your gold total kind of doesn't matter anymore. You don't need to collect interest. It's like having a big bank account when you're 90 years old. Like Warren Buffett, he doesn't need that much money in the bank anymore. I'm sure he would much rather have it when he was 20 rather than when he's 90. And despite being considered a great investor for the entirety of his lifetime, he accumulated over 90% of his wealth after he was 65 already. But again, like that money, you'd rather have it in the early game, right? So in TFT, you want to just spend as much of your money as you can in the late game, because again, it's not worth as much when the game's about to end, so it's not too dangerous to go to 0 gold. But again, at level 9, you're looking to hit most of your legendary units, maybe even get some to 2-star, and then ideally win the game there. Last up we have is level 10. Again, I said you don't need to hit this level in most of your games, and you probably won't. It's probably better in a lot of cases to just stay level 9 and go for more 2-star legendaries, or even go for like a 3-star 4-cost unit. But if you do have like a ton of gold, a ton of econ to make it to level 10, this generally happens in stage 6 and beyond. Nothing really goes past stage 7. Like, I think my longest game ever was until stage 7-2 or 7-3. But you don't really need level 10 unless you're going for like a 10 unit trait bonus or like something crazy like that. But that's pretty much most of standard leveling. The only difference between fast 8ing and fast 9ing with standard leveling is that you do not roll until you reach your desired level. For example, for fast 8, you do not roll at level 6 or 7 like we discussed before, and then you just go straight level 8 and roll all your gold there. For fast 9, it's the same thing, except you don't roll on level 8, or you could roll like maybe 10 gold or something like that to stabilize a little bit to save some HP, but you pretty much just go straight level 9 and roll everything there. You might be asking, how is this even possible? Well, it's generally when you take economy augments in the early game. That way, leveling up is much easier. Augments like Slammin', Raining Gold, like anything that gives you gold or experience. These are just general examples of econ augments that will help you reach level 9 really quickly, and it's pretty much really difficult to do a fast 9 without them. But again, think about what units you're focusing on. If your comp is pretty balanced, stick to standard. If your comp only focuses on 4-cost units and doesn't care about anything else, go to a fast 8. And if you're looking to get some legendary units to your team and play around them really early on, then fast 9ing is going to be for you. If you need to, rewatch this section if you can, because this is probably one of the most important things to know about leveling and econing in TFT right now, because you're going to be doing standard leveling maybe in like 50 to 70% of your games. It does depend on the meta though. Sometimes they are reroll heavy, so let's go over reroll right now. Let's start off with 1-cost reroll. Luckily, most rerolling patterns are very similar, so these are going to be a little bit easier to go over. So let's start off with 1-cost. The difference between 1-cost reroll and every other leveling pattern in the game is that you do not want to press the level up button at all in the early game. The reason why is because we want to have increased odds for getting 1-cost units, because again, we're going for 1-cost reroll. That's the name of the game, right? So when you level up early, you completely kill your odds. And this is one of those beginner mistakes that everyone should try to avoid. So when the game starts, do not press the level up button at all. And you should reach level 4 at stage 2-3 every single time, because again, you gain 2 passive XP every single round. Then at stage 3-1, this is the final point you are level 4. You should be 8 out of 10 XP. What I want you to do is roll down to 32 gold. But you also have to buy all the 1-cost units that you care about in your team comp. For example, if you're doing a Shaco reroll, buy all the Shacos. If you're going Mundo as well for Slayers, then pick up some Mundos as well. But what I want you to do here is identify the most important unit to your comp, and this is going to depend a lot on which comp you're running. If you're curious on what units are important in each comp, head on over to the meta snapshot at bunnymuffins.lol/meta. You need to see if you have 7 or more copies of that unit that you want after you roll to 32 gold. So if you do have 7 or more copies, roll another 10 gold. If you have 8 copies after that, roll another 10 gold after that. So the reason why we do this is because you could potentially get your 3-star unit really early, because it takes 9 copies total to get a 3-star 1-cost unit. But obviously, this doesn't always happen, but I just want to make a note of that in case you do get a lot of copies of your 1-cost unit. When most people do this roll down to 32 gold, they might have around 6 total copies of their desired unit after doing that. But let's say you hit your 3-star unit right away during this roll down. What you want to do after that is just econ back up to 50 gold as soon as possible, and then as soon as you could level up to level 6 while keeping maybe like 40 to 50 gold, level up, add in an extra unit. And then same rules for level 7 and 8. Sometimes you could even level up if you have less than 30 gold, if you really need to reach that extra level threshold to add in an extra unit. For example, for Shaco, if you really need like level 7 to reach 6 Slayer, just level up as soon as you can. But other comps, they might need something like level 8 really desperately. Maybe you're going for 8 techies or something like that, and you really need level 8. If that's the case, then go roll all your gold when you reach that final level to get your power spike. But that's pretty much what you do after you get your 3-star unit. If you did not hit your 3-star unit, what you want to do instead is go up to level 5 naturally at stage 3-2, which is 1 round after 3-1. And then you do what's called a slow roll. So what a slow roll is saving up as much gold as possible above 50 and then rolling down to 50 gold every single turn. So let's say you start off the round, you are at 50 gold, then the round ends, you get your interest gold, you get the round bonus gold, you get a win bonus gold or whatever. You'll be at around like 60, maybe even 61, 62 gold. With that extra gold, you want to roll all the way down until you're back at 50 because we don't gain any extra interest past 50. And while you do this, you're looking for whichever unit you were looking for originally. You pretty much do this all throughout stage 3, and you will also consider doing what's called an all-in. I usually do this when I have 8 copies of the unit that I want, and I just roll until I hit the 3-star. Sometimes I do it at 7, but I look at my board state and my health total before I do that. If you're really low on health though, you might need to do this all in a little bit earlier, because if not, you'll just die out and lose the game before you even hit your 3-star. Next up we have is stage 4-1. And at this point, you want to roll down all your gold until you hit your desired 3-star unit. It's really important to do this because at stage 4, as we discussed during standard leveling, this is when life totals actually matter a ton. So you want to be that guy winning every single round during stage 4 with your 3-star 1 cost, because this is when you are the strongest for your team comp. This is considered like a power spike for most 1-cost reroll comps. Next up we have is level 6. So again, level 6 and beyond, you want to just power level as quickly as possible to get to whatever desired breakpoint you want. Normally like traits are in a 2, 4, 6, 8 breakdown or like a 3, 5, 7, 9 breakdown. So depending on what you're rerolling, whatever traits you're trying to add in to complement them with, identify which ones are the most important. For example, in some comps, maybe like level 6 and level 8 are really important because you get to reach a certain breakpoint. But that also means level 7's a little less important. So what you want to do in those situations is get to level 6 with maybe like 30 or more gold, get to level 7 with 50 or more gold, and then get to level 8 whenever you have enough gold to level all the way up. You can get to your desired level as quickly as you can while econing during the leveling breakpoints you don't really care about reaching. For example, like going from level 6 to level 7, you can't really add in anything that great, then you don't need to rush it. But that should pretty much cover all your needs for 1-cost reroll. It's the easiest one to do, and if you need to combine a 1-cost with a 2-cost reroll, because some comps do that, like they have a 1-cost carry and then they have a 2-cost carry, just transfer over the 1-cost reroll leveling pattern into the 2-cost, which we're about to go over right now. So during 2-cost reroll, you do not roll in the early game, same with the 1-cost reroll, and you also generally do not level up during stage 2. That means you generally reach level 5 around stage 3-1, and then level 6 on 3-2. So level 6 is a little bit weird because you want to start your slow roll as soon as possible, because that's just the most gold efficient way to play the game, because you get the maximum interest gold, and then when you hit, you eventually hit. And 2-cost units have the best rolling odds at level 6. So in case you haven't noticed yet, like 1-cost, their best rolling odds are level 4 and 5. 2-cost is level 6, 3-cost is level 7, and then 4-cost is level 8. But at level 6 for 2-cost, you need to start your slow rolling because you again want to maximize econ and interest, but you also need to make sure your team is strong enough to win rounds during this stage. So remember how I said the 1-cost reroll comps power spike during stage 4? Well, 2-cost rerolls, they have a pretty good power spike during stage 3, because when you do your roll down, because during this stage you want to have a 2-star copy of whatever 2-cost you're using as your carry. That way you have a couple items on them, you have a couple traits active for them, and some people, they might not have their whole team set up yet, so you're able to blow through a lot of teams right now. And it's really important to win these rounds because you are going to lose a lot of rounds in stage 4 because you are weak until you hit your 3-star 2-cost, which could take a while. But during level 6, when you are slow rolling, you want to again look out for when you can all in. Generally, I look to see when I have 7 or more copies of the unit, and that's typically when I roll past 50 gold and try to find the 3-star unit. This could happen as early as stage 3, it could happen as late as stage 5. Sometimes I've hit them on like stage 5-1 or 5-2, for example. But ideally, it happens as early as possible. Most typical games, I would say, it happens around stage 4, where you have like 6 or 7 copies of your most important unit, and then you roll down and hit them 3-star. Maybe around like middle of stage 4, this happens most of the time. I wouldn't rush it. Like, you don't need to do an all-in like you do with 1-cost reroll, where you absolutely need the 3-star 1-cost at the beginning of stage 4. For 2-cost units, it could wait a little longer because, again, you should have won most of your rounds during stage 3, so you should be a little bit healthier to take a few losses in stage 4. But again, after you hit your 3-star unit, you want to start power leveling after that based on whatever breakpoints you need to do. Maybe it's like level 7 and level 9, maybe it's level 6 and level 8. That's going to depend on what comp you're running. But once you know 1-cost reroll, 2-cost reroll is a breeze, but 3-cost reroll is a little bit trickier. I think 3-cost reroll is one of the most difficult things to play because you need a lot of gold to do this, or you need to pick your 3-cost reroll games very, very carefully because I think you should only do this in very specific games. So the execution, I'd say, is pretty easy, but knowing when to do it is going to be hard. So ideally, you're only playing a reroll comp if you have a lot of copies of that unit and if it is also strong in the meta. So you need to reach 2 different conditions. Actually 3, because you also need to be uncontested when doing 3-cost reroll because there are only so many copies in the unit pool. There are 18 3-cost units, for example. So that means you need 9 of them. If you're contested, 2 people need 9 of them. That's going to be every copy of that 3-cost unit. So if some random person's playing that unit as like an item holder or they just need it in their trait, both those players are going to have a very tough time finding their 3-cost 3-star. But the weird part about 3-cost reroll leveling pattern is that in the beginning, it mixes standard leveling and the reroll leveling patterns at the same time. So during stage 2, for example, like you can level up, but you could also decide not to level up. So if you can win streak, I'd say level up, but if you can't, just stay low level and build up your econ instead. That way you have as much gold as you can get in the game, and then you can stabilize later on. For level 5, you don't really have to worry about that too much. Generally, you could reach that at around stage 2-5 or 3-1, similar to before. And then for stage 3, level 6 is very important to hit this at stage 3-2 because you need to do what's called stabilizing your board. So we talked about the 2-cost reroll, how they're very strong at this stage in the game, and the same thing could apply to 3-cost reroll. So you need to look at the game state, you need to look at your health, you need to look at your board. If you're high health, you could get away with a 1-star copy of your 3-cost unit the entirety of stage 3. It's risky, but if you have the life total to play with, you don't need to worry about too much, and you could do a super econ strategy and save up as much gold as possible. However, if you are low life, and most people, when they play 3-cost reroll, they generally do it because they are lose streaking in the early game. You need to do a board stabilization during this stage. So what a lot of people do is on stage 3-2, sometimes even 3-1, is you roll until you hit a 2-star 3-cost unit that you wanted to play originally. For example, if you're playing like Executioner reroll, Rengar and Varus are both 3-cost units and both executioners. You'd roll until you hit both Rengar and Varus 2-star, or maybe you hit one of them and they have 3 items. Sometimes I've even seen people roll to 0 in these situations as well. Whatever the case is, you need to decide whether you can get away with a 1-star copy during stage 3 or if you need to win right now and stabilize. Again, it's going to depend on your health. At this point in the game, you might have 100 health or like 90 plus health, or you might have 60. If you're in like the below 70 range, you probably need a roll to get at least 1 upgrade, if not 2. And if you're in the 90 and above health total, then you could wait a little bit. But again, this is why sometimes 3-cost rerolling is a little bit more difficult than the other ones, because this decision point is very, very important to the rest of your game. Whether you did that stabilization or not, what you want to do next is save up as much gold as you can to reach level 7. I typically do that at around stage 4-1. If I have like super econ and a lot of gold, I do it at 3-5. And again, here you want to stabilize if you have not already and get 2 stars of all your crucial units. After that, you want to econ back up to 50 or more gold, then slow roll until you get a time to all in. Generally, you start looking out for this when you are at 6 copies, and then you actually do the roll down when you have 7 or more copies at this point in the game. It's really important when playing 3-cost reroll to not die. I mean, it's important when you're playing any comp, but especially with 3-cost reroll, because you don't want to hit your comp and then have 1 life left over. Generally, if I am 25 or less life, I'm going to be rolling and all-inning just because I want to be able to take 2 losses before I die after I hit my 3-star 3-cost unit. But generally, again, during level 7, this is when you want to be doing that slow roll. Now, if you are not hitting any copies of your unit, first I'd ask you, why did you go for this comp in the first place? Because if you don't have a lot of units for your comp, you shouldn't go for it in the first place. But let's say you're in that situation where you're going for a comp. Maybe you had an early 2-star 3-cost unit, and then during your slow roll, you're not hitting anything, and you're getting a little scared. Well, I have some good news for you, because if you have 4 or less copies of your desired unit, you could decide to just go level 8 instead and roll for it there. That way you could place some 4 cost units to complement your board. You could add in an extra unit slot to activate another trait, and then you could roll for your 3 cost unit at level 8. The odds go from like 40% to 32%, I think, and anything over 30 is generally a good percentage to hit your desired unit cost. But again, at level 8, the same rules apply. You need to find a time to all in, and if you already have your 3-star 3-cost unit, you need to decide whether you want to go for a 4-cost unit or power level to fit in an extra trait and go level 9. But generally that doesn't happen with 3 cost reroll because you have to spend so much gold to get this unit. Like 3 times 9, that's already 27 gold invested into one unit. You have to do all the leveling up before that. So when you do a 3 cost reroll, you generally don't go like past level 8 unless you have some egregious high roll, and you most likely win the game if they allow you to go level 9. But that's going to cover 3 cost reroll. Again, it's more complicated than 1 and 2 cost by far, and more difficult to execute. But now that we've covered standard leveling and all the rerolls, I just want to reiterate, if your comp is focused on 1 cost units, you want to be level 4, level 5 when you do most of your rolling. If you're focused on 2 costs, level 6. If you're focused on 3 costs, level 7. And if you're focused on 4 costs, level 8, and 5 costs, level 9. One other thing to note is that when you do rerolls, sometimes you want to complement them with different cost levels. For example, there's some reroll comps that are like, oh, I want a 3-star 2 cost and a 3-star 3 cost. So you just combine the two. So you'd follow 2 cost reroll first, and then after you hit your 2 cost 3-star unit at level 6, you simply just go level 7 and then slow roll for whichever 3 costs you're going for after that. I'm going to use Executioners as an example again. Like Graves is a 2 cost unit, so you go for Graves, and then maybe at 3 cost you go for like Rengar or Varus. But now that we've covered everything, let's go over some general leveling tips that I think everyone should know before they play set 14, and that is that you typically have 3 different choices every single turn, and that is to save gold, to roll, or to level. It's pretty simple if you break it down like that, right? So the question is, when do you want to do each? So let's start off with the first one, which is saving gold. You'd really just want to save gold if you need to roll at a specific level and you have not reached that level yet. For example, for standard leveling or like for fast aiding, you don't really care about 2 and 3 cost units or 1 cost units. You want to go directly for the 4 cost units. Then you do a fast 8. You want to save as much gold as possible. Another scenario is if you are healthy. For example, when we talked about standard leveling and we're thinking whether we should go like level 8 or level 9, if you're healthy, maybe you could go level 9 and you don't need to stabilize as much at level 8. And lastly, this is kind of related with the healthy part, is if you have a strong board, you pretty much don't need to roll if you already have a strong board, right? Because what are you rolling for? You're rolling for upgrades. But if you already have upgrades, then what good can rolling possibly do, right? You want to instead save up to level up later on and reach something bigger and better in the future. Now let's talk about spending gold. Let's start off with rolling. So rolling is one of the best ways to get a stronger board because getting unit upgrades is one of the biggest power spikes you can get in the game. So if you really need to preserve your life total, you need to roll. If you need to complete a lot of pairs on your bench, you need to roll as well. And lastly, if you need units at a specific cost level and you are at the optimal level to roll for them, then again, you need to roll and not save up and not level up. Lastly, let's cover leveling up. And you pretty much only want to level up if you need to add in a key extra unit to activate a trait, for example. Like if you want to reach 7 Anima Squad and you're at like 6 out of 7 and you can't fit any other units in your team, then you pretty much just have to level up to reach the 7 Anima Squad power spike. Another reason to level up is if you need to roll to obtain a specific unit at a specific cost. For example, for the 4 cost, we want to be level 8. For the 3 cost, we want to be level 7. So if we're not there yet, then we want to consider when it's a good time to level up. Lastly, if you have too much extra gold, you might as well buy experience. So we talked about like 50 gold is a magic number because that's the most interest you can get in most TFT games. So if you have like 70 gold, for example, and you don't need to roll because you're strong, you could just spend 20 gold into leveling up. Maybe you just hit the next level for free without losing any interest. And that's like a good time to kind of do that. But hopefully that helps you out a little bit in your decision making because those 3 things are pretty much the only things you could do with your gold, which is something you have to pay attention to every single turn. So hopefully this video helped you out, introduce things into set 14. Because they removed anomalies and stuff like that, you don't need to save gold for doing the anomalies, but they did add like treasure realms on some portals and stuff like that for some of the hacks. So you definitely do need to watch out for that if you do get alerted about it early on in the game based on the portal. But for most cases, like again, you don't have the anomaly, so you don't need to save up extra gold for certain rounds or anything like that. So overall, like I'd say leveling is much easier in this set than it was in the previous one. But hopefully this guide helped you out. If you did, share it with a friend. That's the best way to help me out after that. And then also let me know down in the comments what questions you have, maybe like timestamp it if it's something specific. But apart from that, that's going to be it for me today. I hope to see you all in a future video.